All right. In case you're just joining us, we were sharing locations because we're talking about beating the winter blues today. But let me get started with my normal stuff here. Just a couple of the normal reminders. We will have time for questions at the end of the presentation. You can type those in by clicking the Q&A or chat section in the lower portion of your control panel. Feel free to chat between yourselves as well throughout. Again, we're sharing locations because we're going to be talking about winter blues. We'll be posting a recording of the webinar on our blog. The link for that will be shown at the end. And if you would like a PDF copy of the presentation, there will be a link to download that on that same post as the recording. If your question does not get answered today, or if you think of any others, please email our support inbox, which will be shown at the end as well. All right. So, what's on the agenda for today? Beating the winter blues. For a lot of us, again, specifically in the northern part of the world right now, this time of year can be rough. The weather turns cold, the sun doesn't shine as much, and it can have an effect on our mood and our mental health. And even if you're not far north as far as snow, things like that, it does still get cooler, right? It still can affect us. Those weather changes can affect us. So today we're going to talk about some of the signs and symptoms of the winter blues and SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder, and then some tips and tricks to hopefully help combat those things. So let's talk about some signs and symptoms first. Having one or some of these concerns could mean you've got either the winter blues going on or possibly are on the verge of or even have that seasonal affective disorder. Big thing to pay attention to here with the winter blues, they kind of the differentiators here. Symptoms tend to be more mild or they only last a short period, a couple weeks or so. There's not really a hard date or anything like that, but they don't last as long. The winter blues isn't necessarily diagnosable, right? But if symptoms stick around and are affecting your daily life and your ability to function normally, then you might have that seasonal affective disorder or close to it. About 5% of adults in the US experience SAD. About 10 to 20% experience the winter blues. Those are the stats. Could be a little more, could be a little less, but that's what I've found. So, some of the things to pay attention to, including as far as signs and symptoms, persistent low mood or sadness most days, right? Feeling hopeless, guilty, having low self-worth, tired, physically tired, fatigued, low energy, things like that. Difficulty concentrating or making decisions, changes in your sleep. So this can either be sleeping more or having trouble falling asleep. So depending on who you are, it can manifest in different ways. Increased appetite. Specifically, they found craving carbohydrates. So pastas, rice, breads, crackers, sugars are more common when we're talking about this type of thing, which can obviously lead to weight gain as well, right? If we're craving more food. Loss of interest in activities you once enjoyed, and then just social withdrawal or feelings of isolation. Now, again, there's other less common symptoms that may pop up, and you don't need to have all of these symptoms to experience the winter blues or SAD, but if you're experiencing some of them, it's worth paying attention and looking to make a change now. Small change, doesn't have to be crazy, just looking to make some changes now to help. So, before we get to that, the tips and tricks, let's talk about what can cause winter blues or SAD. I mean, it seems obvious, right? But actually, researchers don't know exactly what causes us or, if there's any specific things with that seasonal depression. So, lack of sunlight, which again, we know may trigger the condition if you're prone to getting it. Some other thoughts out there include biological clock change. So, again, when there's less sunlight, your internal biological clock shifts. This internal clock is what regulates your mood, your sleep, and other hormones. So when it shifts, you can kind of get out of sync with that daily schedule that you've been used to, and it's hard to adjust to changes in that daylight length. We just had the time change a few weeks ago, right? And I feel like a lot of us could tell our bodies, they try to fight that. Sun goes down earlier, it affects us, some just more than others. Another cause could be a brain chemical imbalance that could put you at a greater risk. So, brain chemicals called neurotransmitters, they send communications between nerves in our brain. So, these chemicals include serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone and contributes to happiness in those moods, the better moods. So if you're at risk of SAD, you may already have less serotonin activity. Since sunlight helps regulate serotonin, again, lack of sunlight in the winter can just make things worse. Serotonin levels can fall further, leading to that depression or, again, winter blues. Vitamin D deficiency as well can be a cause. Your serotonin levels get a boost from vitamin D. And since sunlight helps produce vitamin D, less sun in the winter can lead to that deficiency. So that change obviously affects your serotonin level and your mood. Melatonin levels can change. So, melatonin is a chemical and hormone that affects your sleep. Mostly, we hear about that quite a bit, and it can affect our mood as well. So, again, lack of sunlight actually can create an overproduction of melatonin in some people. So, you might be feeling more sleepy for some of you. And then just if you have negative thoughts, right? People with seasonal affective disorder often have other things going on, stress, anxiety, and negative thoughts about winter. It's kind of that self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Or like a chicken and egg scenario. Researchers aren't sure if the negative thoughts are a cause of depression or an effect of the depression, right? So it's kind of a vicious circle we can get into when we have those negative thoughts. Some statistics on who may be at more risk for seasonal affective disorder. It's more common in people between 18 and 30 years of age and women. You're also at a higher risk if you have another mood disorder, which makes sense, right? So, depressive disorder, bipolar disorder. If you have relatives that struggle with seasonal affective disorder or other forms of depression or mental health conditions, if you live at latitudes, again, common sense stuff, live at latitudes farther north or farther south from the equator with less sunlight during those winter times, or if you live in more cloudy regions that just don't get as much sun as some areas. So just like the symptoms, just because you fall into one of the risk categories and things like that doesn't mean that you will for sure have issues with the winter blues. But knowledge is power. And if you're at a higher risk, it's always better to look at some things you can do to hopefully prevent issues from coming up or make them a little bit more manageable. Again, we all might have some of those days, but if we can have some good things in our routine to help prevent or help make us feel better, that's all we can do. Right? So you know what to look for and who may be at more risk. And maybe you're experiencing some of those symptoms. So let's talk about the actual things that can help either prevent or slow the progression of some of these issues. So first tip, makes sense, right? Get outside. I said sunlight about 17 times in the last slide since seasonal affective and winter blue symptoms are worsened by lack of sun exposure. Getting outside needs to be a priority during those winter months. Now, again, I know it's cold for a lot of you. You don't have to stay out forever, even just a few minutes. Getting that sun, though, is so important to help these symptoms. So I would just make a goal to get outside daily. Again, 5 minutes or less, even. Obviously, if the wind chill's -50, we can make an exception to that. But if you see the sun out, try to get in there, try to soak it up as much as you can. It can make a huge impact on your mood and help target those specific symptoms that you might be experiencing because it helps balance serotonin activity. I talked about that. It helps balance that melatonin productions and that circadian rhythm, what I talked about, that internal clock. And it also increases the vitamin D levels, right? There's so many good things of just getting out into the sunlight. Now, if you can't get outdoors, you can also move. Someone just put this in the chat. You got it. You can also move a chair, your workstation, even like a kitchen table next to the window that gets sunlight. If you can, try to sit there for as long as you can, as much as you can during the day. And you can break the time into shorter chunks, right? You don't have to sit there for 3 hours at a time, but just expose yourself to that light. So yeah, that absolutely works as well. If you have a good sunlight window, be like your plant that you have in front of the window. Get yourself some of that sun as well. All right, next tip is to stay active. So, physical activity has been shown to boost mood, decrease the symptoms of depression, and reduce stress. So, typical goal, if you listen to any of the other webinars on physical activity, 150 minutes per week is the standard recommendation. Just getting that heart rate up, that's what you want to shoot for if you can. Now, again, if you have some of these symptoms, you can feel overwhelmed and unmotivated, right? Which is very, very, very common if you're feeling those winter blues. So I kind of put a strategy here, the 10 times 10 times 10 plan. So instead of committing to a longer workout, like a 30-minute at a time, break it up into chunks. So if your goal is to walk that 30 minutes, divide that time into three 10-minute workouts, right? One in the morning, another in the afternoon, one before it gets dark. So you don't have to do it all at once. Yeah, there's so many, I agree, there's so many options for online workouts that are 5 or 10 minutes long, just to keep it fresh too. If you don't want to just walk, if you want something else, do some searches. There's so much, or just dance, put on some music and dance. Anything that's going to get that heart rate up. And when we listen to those things, I'll talk about this when we do things that make us happy and feel good, you got music and you're moving, double. You got a double bonus there. So next suggestion, I just told you to search online, and I'm going to tell you to limit that screen time. So search, put the music on, and then walk away from the screen. But next suggestion is to limit that screen time. So being indoors more in the winter typically means an increase in screen time, right? It typically happens. But screen time, more research is coming out all of the time, especially when we're talking phones, social media, things like that. It is terrible for our mental health. So, things like doom scrolling, watching the news, we want to be informed, but we weren't meant to be informed 24 hours a day. That's not what our brain was made to do. So, your goal would be to limit the amount of time you spend in front of the screen. Again, not just news, social media, those types of things. Set screen time limits on your phone. Keep track of TV, laptop, those screens as best as you can, and make realistic goals to cut down on that time. And then make time for those other activities, right? Reading, exercise, socializing, meditation. Share some ideas. What's one thing that you can commit to instead of being on your phone or your computer after work today? For, again, even if it's 10 minutes. Audiobooks, I love it. Give each other some inspiration. It's so easy to fall down that rabbit hole. And I do it. I 100%. Before I put screen limits on my phone, it was terrible. And even now, I'm like, oh, shoot, I ran out already. So it's a knowledge thing again, too, when we're talking about screen time. So another tip that kind of goes along with that, board games, I love it. So these are perfect. Another tip that goes along with that is to take what I read about was a psychological holiday. So it's very overcomplicated, but just do something that requires your brain to focus on something else. So doing a craft, reading a book, going to see a movie, cooking your favorite meal, or looking up a new recipe, listening to music, listening to an inspirational message, something different, something that helps engage your mind and feels a little different, even special, can be an opportunity to just feel in control, take care of yourself, and get your brain focused on something more positive than some of those negative thoughts you may be feeling. Another thing I just mentioned, worth another bullet point though, that meditation. It can be really helpful to combat negative messages in your head. So there's a bunch of different kinds of meditation out there. So if you found one that you don't like, try something else as far as different messages. And this is guided meditation that I'm talking about. You can simply just focus on breathing too. That's a meditation. But there's gratitude meditations out there. There's ones that focus on positive messages that you can look. We actually have some on our blog. So, just different ways to focus your mind on different things and, those scattered thoughts that we have when we're stressed and we've got things going on that can help focus on one thing and calm down that stress response. So adopting just a meditation habit is just a great way to set you up for long term as well. So consider, again, that 10 minutes. Consider doing that, even 5 minutes. Again, you can do 1 minute meditations, but if you can set aside some time during the day, it can really help. Insight Timer, yep, that's a great one. Calm is another one too. There's lots of different meditation apps out there. And again, you can just do a simple search on YouTube as well. You don't have to sign up for anything or download any apps. Practicing gratitude in general is a great way to help focus on positive aspects of your life as well. So kind of building on this. You can do a gratitude journal where you focus on those positive things from your day or your week, depending on how many times you do it. You can incorporate gratitude into your daily activities, like your commute to work, something like that. You can do a gratitude walk when you add in those 10-minute walks, like you said you were going to do, right? So when we intentionally focus on the positive, your brain starts to recognize those positives more. Your brain actually changes how it functions when you start to focus on those positives. Just like anything else, if you focus on the negative, it's going to look for more negative. If you start to focus on the positive, which is harder because our brain is wired to look at negative because it's a threat, right? But if we start to focus on the positive, your brain's going to start to recognize those things more. Side note too, just finding things that make you laugh. I mentioned this, I think, or I don't know if I did or not, but in my brain, I mentioned it. Finding things that make you laugh is a great way to get a boost of feel-good hormones, right? So watching funny movies. There's lots of funny holiday movies out right now. Talking to that friend that always makes you laugh. Whatever just makes your heart happy, right? Find more ways to add it to your daily life if you can. And then last but not least on this page, prioritize sleep. So I mentioned that some people sleep more, some people sleep less if they're dealing with some of the winter blues or sad stuff. So really, the best thing you can do is try to establish a consistent schedule. 7 to 9 hours is the recommendation. Whatever you can get. I know schedules out there are crazy and there's different things that are going to affect it, but if possible, if you can go to bed and wake up at the same time each day, even on the weekends, that's what we want. That helps regulate that internal clock, those circadian rhythms, and it can help combat insomnia if you do have that. Now, if you can't go to sleep at the same time, find a relaxing routine that you can do before bed that helps just set you up for success, if you will. Get that mind and body to ready to get as good of quality of sleep as you can. Again, it might not be perfect, but do those self-care things as much as you can to try to get the quality sleep. Because if you don't get as much, that's okay. But if you can get more quality, that's still going to help. And then next page, more tips here. We have socialize. So closeness to others is essential for mental health. In the last few years, I think more people have realized that. More studies have come out realizing that being around people, we crave it, whether we acknowledge it or not. And honestly, it's really easy to isolate yourself, especially during those winter months, right? And having alone time is not a bad thing. I know fellow introverts out there, we love, love, love being alone. It can be a great form of self-care, but we have to find the balance. Too much of isolation without any type of social interaction can have negative effects on that mental health, and it can make some of these symptoms of the winter blues worse. Excuse me. So basically, goal on this one would just be to plan time or activities with anyone you want to. Again, make it people that bring you joy if you can, friends and family. You can join clubs and events in your community to stay engaged as well. It doesn't have to be with people you know even, see what's out there in your area. And then think about volunteering as well. Volunteering for a good cause that you're interested in can be a huge boost to mental well-being. Right now, with just having Thanksgiving and things, there's lots of opportunities to volunteer. So joining a cause not only helps the cause, but it helps you because it reduces that isolation. It increases that engagement, increases your purposeful and meaningful activities. And again, we're positively impact someone else at the same time. Finding your purpose is something a lot of psychologists talk about when they're talking about mental health. And volunteering is a great way to get perspective on life and then can help direct you to your purpose. All right, nutrition. Eating well is crucial to your overall being. We all know that, right? We all know eating is so important. And this topic is way too big to dive into and stay within the time frame today. But just a couple things to think about. These are some types of foods that have been linked to healthier brain and mental health. So omega-3 fatty acids. So those are things found in fatty fish. So salmon, sardines are two options. Flaxseed, walnuts, those types types of things for brain health. Again, you probably heard about that, the omega-3s, right? But they also help reduce inflammation and have been linked to lower rates of depression and anxiety, which is exactly what we're looking for. So get in those omega-3s. B vitamins are vital for the production, specifically B6, B9, which is folate, and B12. They are vital for the production of neurotransmitters that regulate mood, such as that serotonin and dopamine, which is another feel-good hormone. So deficiencies with these, which it makes sense, deficiencies in these are associated with mood disorders. So vitamin B. Antioxidants. Foods rich in antioxidants, so things like fruits and vegetables, lots of things have antioxidants in them, but that they help combat what's called oxidative stress, which can negatively impact brain health. So a diet high in antioxidants is associated with better mental health outcomes based on research. Probiotics, the gut, it has a microbiome. It's called your second brain, if you've ever heard of that. Your gut, it plays a huge role in mental health because it influences the production of those neurotransmitters. Again, serotonin levels, a huge amount comes from our gut, actually. So, fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut can support gut health and, in turn, mental well-being. Again, I did not dive into that nearly as much, but there's lots of other webinars we have on healthy things. Do some research. You can email us if you want some more info on that. All right, the next one is just a fun one that I stumbled across at some point. I don't remember when, but this is from the Scandinavian Standard website. The definition of this, it's actually pronounced hygge. It looks like higgy, right? That's how I would say it, but I looked it up. It's hygge. It's a practice that's all about coziness and surrounding yourself with things that make life good, like friendship, laughter, and security, as well as more concrete things like warmth, light, seasonal food and drink. Doesn't that sound amazing? Hygge embodies a feeling of comfort, contentment, and well-being through simple and everyday experiences. It encompasses a range of feelings and experiences related to coziness, togetherness, and an appreciation for life's small pleasures. Now, if you don't like that, you need to try it, getting some coziness, because the fact that that's in part of the definition is just being cozy, that's fantastic. So try to find things that make you feel good, make you feel cozy, and go from there. And last and certainly not least here, ask for help. So whether that's asking someone to help you out with a task at home, asking someone just to chat, asking your boss for support on something that's stressing you out, that's adding to some of these winter blues, or connecting with a professional, through your company's EAP or employee assistance program, asking your doctor for a referral. Asking for help is never, ever, ever going to be a bad idea, especially if you feel like you're closer to that seasonal affective disorder side of things. So, on that note, a few forms of help to end with here. So, cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, that's a form of talk therapy that helps people identify and change negative thought patterns. So, right, that's what we're looking at when we have winter blues, negative thought patterns, and SAD as well. Research suggests that CBT is an effective treatment for SAD, helping people develop coping strategies and managing seasonal mood changes. Light therapy. So this involves exposure to bright, full spectrum light for a prescribed period each day, typically in the morning. This form of treatment is common for people diagnosed with SAD. The National Institutes of Mental Health recommends sitting in front of a light box, which I have pictured here, in the morning for 20 to 60 minutes. So those light boxes usually are 10,000 lux, which lux is a light intensity measurement. So, and they recommend doing that from fall until spring again. Now, you can get these boxes easily online now, so it's not like it has to be a prescription thing, but just make sure you're looking at the quality, that light intensity, and chat with doctor if you have any questions. I actually bought one of these for a friend a few years ago, and she loves it. So, yeah, it's just something different to think about. All right, supplementation, I talked about some of those foods and things. So, we really have to be careful with supplementation. It's a very individual decision and should always be talked with about your doctor. But a couple types of supplementation, vitamin D, we talked about lower vitamin D levels being a cause for the winter blues. So it makes sense that a supplement could help. Again, chat with doctor. Magnesium, that's a big one too. Just in general in mental health, magnesium can help. Um, and some research shows that magnesium levels could be lower in the winter as well. And stress can deplete magnesium levels, and magnesium can improve sleep. It's kind of a wonder thing. So again, there's various types of magnesium supplements as well. So talk to your doctor on what would be best for you on that. And then lastly, prescription medication could be a good solution for some. Antidepressants, other medications may be prescribed to help regulate mood and address those chemical balances of serotonin that can contribute to SAD. So again, have that conversation with your doctor, do what's best for you, and go from there. All right, let's wrap it up. Winter blues or seasonal affective disorder can absolutely affect all of us. Again, no matter where you're from, you can still get it even in sunnier climates. But knowing the signs and symptoms and who may be at increased risk is important to pay attention to. And whether or not you're in those categories, making small changes to just bring in some healthy habits that make you feel good will help get you through those winter months. And of course, ask for help if needed. All right, before we get to questions, it looks like you guys have gotten some questions answered already between yourselves. I wasn't able to even keep up there. But new next webinars, January, finding your why. So it's not just about setting goals, right? We need the why behind it. That's what helps keeps that motivation up. And then February, we're going to talk it's heart health month. So we're going to focus on cardio, not just running, I promise, but it just sounded good. So running for your heart health. So those are the next webinars coming up in the new year, which I cannot believe I'm saying that. And then lifestyle rewards. If you do get points for watching the webinars and they do ask these questions, these will be what would pop up. I'll give you a second to screenshot. These will also be on the download for you can download the slides on the blog here, which I'll have the blog uh, website on the next slide. But most people don't have the questions, but if you do, those are going to be what they are. And then, of course, you can keep in touch with a balance with social media, right? We're on Facebook and Instagram. You can watch the past webinars. So the recording for this webinar will be on the blog, that website there, and then you can register for upcoming webinars. We should have a post pretty soon with all of the 2026 webinars. There's going to be some good ones next year. And then, of course, if you want to chat with a health coach, you can call, you can email, and we will definitely make some time to chat about anything health related.